Hey everybody, Mark Burgess here, Big East Bass Fishing. Thought I'd bring you a quick little video on some news in the industry. By now you've probably heard, if you follow the sport of bass fishing anyway, and if you're watching this video, you probably do. You've heard that Kevin VanDam has announced his retirement from the sport of professional bass fishing. So I guess this is going to be his last year competing, although he said he's not done. He's going to be involved, I'm sure, in the sport some way, shape, or form, through conservation and so forth. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for him. So I thought I'd share just a few stories of a few interactions that I've had with Kevin over the years. Some of them are pretty funny. So let's see. So obviously when I came into the sport, you know, I had learned of Kevin VanDam, obviously heard of Kevin VanDam. We talked about him in the bass club. This would have been like the early 90s when I started fishing bass tournaments. And, you know, so he obviously was very successful, and so his name came up a lot. And, you know, so obviously, you know, followed him, was watching him, reading about him on, you know, in Bassmaster and Bass Times, seen him on the TV shows, you know, with Bob Cobb and Ray Scott, you know, so obviously knew who he was. And then, you know, flash forward to the late 90s when I turned professional and started fishing professional tournaments. I started in the fall of '96 on Hartwell. That following year, I fished all 4 of the Eastern Invitationals. So back then they were called Invitationals, they weren't Opens, and it was boater on boater, or pro on pro. Back in those days. So very interesting format, to say the least, very competitive. My first check came 4 tournaments in. So the third tournament for 1997, if I can remember. Now I'm going back here. So that was on Santee Cooper. It was brutally tough, and I was fortunate to just basically fish my strengths and catch fish every day. Ended up finishing like 32nd overall, I believe, in the tournament. And I'll never forget, at the weigh-in, Kevin came up on stage without any fish. He hadn't caught a fish in 3 days, and he commented that, you know, that often doesn't happen very often for him. So I remember that like it was yesterday. So that was my first interaction with Kevin, competing against him on the invitationals. And another invitational was on Bugs Island in Virginia, and I had weighed in, I believe it was the first day, and I had a really good bag, and I took the lead, early lead. And so, you know, come down off the weigh-in stage behind the trailer, and that's where all the media was, you know. So I had, you know, there were all the various, you know, radio stations and TV stations, magazines, and of course the writers for Bassmaster and whatnot. You know, all around me, like 10 or 12 people around me, microphones and cameras in my face, you know, and I was telling them about, you know, the day I had. And in the background, I heard them call Kevin's name, and, you know, the weight, and, you know, the crowd goes crazy, and it's a new leader. So that all got their attention as well. Kevin came down off the stairs behind the trailer, and all the writers and reporters were looking at me, and they looked over at Kevin, and they were gone. They're right over to Kevin. And rightfully so, you know. But Kevin being Kevin, very competitive. I could see him over there, and he was looking right at me, you know, like he was coming for me, and certainly he did. He caught him real good. Ended up winning that event on a real obscure pattern. So, story for another day. Another one, again, invitational, early years, that first year, 97 or so. It was Thousand Islands, and out of Clayton. And back then we had the registration meeting at like a auditorium in a school, and we had the registration meeting and the pairing meeting there, and we were in a line. It was in the fall, and we're in a line outside. It was a little crisp out, you know, a little cool, a little cloudy. And I'll never forget it. Kevin and his wife Sherry came up, standing in line, and they just had their 2 boys. They'd just been born. They're both born premature. And Kevin was holding one of his sons, and Sherry was holding the other, and they were on oxygen. Both boys were on oxygen at the time, and there was Kevin with his wife in line, waiting to register, for this event. That just goes to show you the commitment that not only Kevin had and still has to this day, but obviously his wife. Okay, so Sherry, so a big part of his success. So shout out to her as well. So Bass staff came and got him and brought him in because it wasn't, obviously was more comfortable inside with the two preemies there. So then throughout the years, as my career progressed, I fished against Kevin on the Opens, and then in the FLW series and FLW Tour, early 2000s FLW Tour, then mid 2000s FLW series. Still a force to be reckoned with. He was just on a tear, accumulating tournament wins, classic wins, appearances, FLW wins, all of that, just absolutely dominating the sport in every way. And that was due to extremely hard work ethic. He was very strong work ethic all the time. And speaking of that, we're at a show. We're at Bass University in Worcester. Lee Dakota was there, Terry Baxay, myself, Kevin. And I remember we had to go up. It was time to go up, and we both went up to the upstairs to where the tournament rooms were. And they weren't quite ready for us. So there's, come back in another 15, 20 minutes. So Kevin and I went out to the hallway, and he goes, I'm going back downstairs, go back to work. And I said, yeah, I'll do the same. And he was working for Quantum, and I was working for Shimano at the time at that show. So always just doing everything he could for his sponsors, his fans, just, not rest at all in those situations. So we, then, I made the Elite Series in 2009, and my third tournament in was on Wheeler Lake, Decatur, Alabama. And I had a couple rough tournaments prior to that. Amistad, I caught them, but they caught them better. Dardanelle, completely shanked that one, didn't catch them very good. And so I arrived at Wheeler, and I'd been there before, and I just went and I fished my strengths, and I caught them really good. And I made the cut. That was my first cut ever on the Elite Series. And I remember there's a pre-cut meeting that you had to attend if you made the cut, that Bass would make you attend to go over the rules and if anything changed and whatnot, and also pair you up with your marshal. So I sat down, Kevin sat down beside me, and he said, hey Kevin, what's going on? He said, not much, what's going on with you, and I said, what happened to you? Because now, he didn't catch him very well, but he still made the cut, okay? So I was ahead of him at that point, but then he turns to me when I asked him that, he said, I'm sick as a dog. So I had to laugh, it was, he was really under the weather, and, obviously did all he could to catch what he caught. And so he ended up beating me in that tournament, but that's Kevin being Kevin. Trying to think of what other stories I have, involving Kevin. I just, like I said, just whenever I saw him, he was always working hard. Just awesome work ethic, and that's really what's got him to this point. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to him and wish him the best in his retirement and what he's going to do in the future. But if you don't know who he is, Google him. Certainly go to Bassmaster or FLW and look him up. So you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so have a great day. Just thought I'd bring you that little story.